Waitress Drenched and Humiliated, but one millionaire's unexpected act transformed everything. Disaster. Sarah rushed through the crowded diner, her tray heavy with orders, each clatter echoing in the warm, greasy air. She navigated around a table filled with well-dressed diners celebrating some golden anniversary. They laughed, their voices mingling with the sounds of sizzling bacon and murmurs of conversation, but Sarah felt the eyes of those patrons scrutinizing every move. Today, of all days, was the day she had finally decided to look into enrolling in community college to pursue nursing, her lifelong dream ignited by the care she provided to her disabled mother. But as she turned to take a drink order, the nightmare began. A jostle from behind, a cascade of soda erupting from the pitcher, splattering over her shirt and down her jeans. Gasps turned into uproarious laughter. "Look at the waitress!" one woman squealed, pointing. Sarah's heart sank. The shame consumed her as she felt their cruel eyes taking in her humiliated form. She fought the heat rising to her cheeks, willing herself to breathe, to remain composed. These people, with their money and privilege, would never understand the weight she carried. Her mind raced. What did it matter if she spent the night studying anatomy if she couldn't shake the burden of this embarrassment? Underneath it all, doubt seeped in. Perhaps she was only a waitress and nothing more, trapped in a life where failures seemed to stalk her like shadows. Was a nursing career just a fantasy? As she wiped her hands on her damp apron, she caught sight of a figure in the corner, watching. David, a billionaire tech entrepreneur visiting from out of town, stirred his coffee as he observed the scene unfold. Her humiliation seemed to affect him deeply, something about her struggle igniting an ember of respect in his heart. When the laughter finally died down, he quietly slipped a note and a generous tip into her apron pocket before leaving. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Sarah stood there, the weight of that note pressing against her heart and mind with conflicting urges. Should she feel grateful or humiliated by the charity of a stranger? He believed in her in a way she struggled to believe in herself. Determination sparked, she logged on to the community college site that evening, fingers hesitating over the keyboard. The thought of finally pursuing nursing filled her with a mix of hope and dread, but the excitement waned as she entered the classroom, the walls whispering judgments about where she belonged. Just a waitress floated around, echoes of laughter piercing her skin. Would they care about her dreams? Or would they mock her and belittle her aspirations? As she sat down, uncertainty clawed at her gut. The voices circled, each word a reminder that she was an outsider in this world of privilege. Just when she thought she might not survive the session, she spotted Professor Mitchell, the empathetic instructor who took a kind interest in her. For the first time, someone saw beyond the "just a waitress" label to glimpse her tenacity. As the lesson unfolded, fears surged anew. What if she wasn't enough? Those same patrons were still out there, lingering in the corners of her mind, ready to tear her down again. Could she summon the strength to rise, break through their judgments, and stake a claim on her worth as a future nurse? The pressure intensified. Sarah felt the anxiety wrap around her like a stranglehold, her dreams flickering like a candle against a gust of wind in that harsh classroom. The stakes were higher than ever, and hope seemed as fragile as glass. In the oppressive silence of the room, she could practically hear her heartbeat, a quiet drum roll signifying her impending leap into the unknown. Would she find the strength within to fight back against a world that thought it knew her story? Trapped in the stranglehold of doubt, she was left wondering, would the courage she had come to evoke be enough to rise above the lingering shadows of judgment? The first few weeks of nursing school were a blur of information and insecurity for Sarah. Her heart raced during lectures, her pulse quickened whenever she was called on, and the weight of expectations sat heavily on her shoulders. Each she saw on papers brought a flicker of exhilaration, while harsher critiques drove her deeper into the shadows of doubt. Moving through the bustling campus was like navigating a sea of polished confidence, and she often felt like an imposter, ducking behind stacks of textbooks as a shield. Despite the anxiety, small victories began to accumulate. Each skill practiced, like taking blood pressure or administering injections under the watchful eye of Professor Mitchell, struck a chord within her. In those moments, the laughter of the diners haunted her less. With every new skill, the little girl who once cared for her mother came back to life, whispering encouragement in the recesses of Sarah's mind. One afternoon, the world outside the normally bustling cafeteria became a stark contrast to her internal chaos. Sarah sat alone, the remains of a hastily consumed sandwich in front of her, lost in thought. Her phone buzzed a message from David, the millionaire. With trembling fingers, she opened it. "How's school? Remember what I mentioned? It takes courage to pursue your dreams." His words, while comforting, stirred a tidal wave of warmth mixed with apprehension. It was both validating and terrifying. This connection with someone from an entirely different world left her contemplating whether she could bridge that gap herself. Were dreams meant solely for those who had never tasted humiliation? The lingering question gnawed at her spirits. In an attempt to quiet the doubt, Sarah resolved to speak with her classmates more openly. That day, she sought out Robin, a friendly face who had shown genuine kindness in orientation. Sarah summoned every ounce of courage and invited her to form a study group. "Yeah, I'd love that. I could use the help," Robin said. Relief washed over Sarah, mixing with an unexpected rush of excitement. They exchanged numbers, and just like that, a door to camaraderie swung open. That evening, as they huddled together preparing for an upcoming anatomy test, Sarah felt a shift within herself. Sharing her struggles with the material and listening to Robin's own uncertainty stripped away her feelings of isolation. She realized that everyone around her had their own battles and burdens, regardless of their backgrounds. It was a powerful revelation, one that lifted pieces of the weight she had carried, the weight of belonging. But even as her confidence began to grow, the specter of doubt lurked near, ready to pounce at any moment. The comparison game lurked in the background, especially when she overheard conversations of classmates with lavish support systems, an innate ease with the material, or prior experience. She sometimes found herself frozen, watching them shine while she felt faded. It was in one of these moments of vulnerability that Sarah received another unexpected call from David. His voice on the other end brimmed with enthusiasm about a mentorship program he was launching for aspiring healthcare professionals. He wanted her to consider applying. "What if I'm not cut out for it?" she blurted, a habit she couldn't quite kick. The laughter of the diner patrons echoed in her brain, tying her down. "Don't sell yourself short," he replied, his voice firm yet encouraging. "You're more than a waitress. You're driven, compassionate, and capable. Just remember that." As they ended the call, her heart raced. It was a challenge, a chance to step further away from the doubts that still held her. Yet, the fear of exposure clawed at her. Would she fail? Would she risk stepping into a role meant for someone more established, only to fall flat? Despite the uncertainty, Sarah felt her mind turning. This was about more than just her aspirations, it was about proving to herself that she really could rise above the limitations she believed defined her. With trembling fingers, she navigated to the application page for David's mentorship and hovered there, heart pounding. Every second felt like an eternity, and it was now or never. Would she finally break free from the shackles of her past judgment? Could she embrace the future awaiting her instead? In that moment, she understood sometimes, the journey was as critical as the destination. And as she clicked submit, one thought resonated with urgency: was she ready to transform her dreams into reality, or would she allow the ghosts of doubt to cling to her heels once again? The days following Sarah's application submission were a strange mixture of exhilaration and trepidation. Every time her phone buzzed, a jolt of hope surged through her, only to be punctured by the fear of potential rejection. Each notification felt like a test of her resilience, and she tried to distract herself by immersing deeper into her studies and practice sessions, treating every lecture like a stepping stone toward building a future she hardly dared to envision. Amidst the chaos of her internal dialogue, there was a noticeable shift in her disposition. The shadows of doubt still hovered, yet she found moments of clarity. The camaraderie in her study group, bolstered by Robin's unwavering support, helped her navigate the choking sense of inadequacy. They would often laugh off their mistakes, creating an atmosphere that allowed errors to be seen as part of the learning process rather than confirmations of failure. In one particularly revealing anatomy lab session, Sarah struggled to locate the renal arteries on the model. Frustration bubbled within her, but instead of shrinking back, she made a conscious decision to vocalize her thoughts. "Am I the only one who feels like a complete mess at this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "No way," Robin replied promptly, her face breaking into a genuine smile. "I felt like a disaster the first time too. Just give yourself a break. We're all figuring this out together." Hearing this, Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her. It sparked an understanding that growth required embracing vulnerability. Their discussions, often branching from anatomy to their personal experiences, illuminated connections she desperately craved in her life. Each conversation infused her with a sense of belonging she had yearned for. Yet, as her resolve began to solidify, the specter of judgment still stalked her. In those moments of injury and pride, the voice of her self-doubt would whisper insidiously, "You're not as good as they are. You still have your past." It reminded her painfully of the diner where she had spent years underappreciated, feeling like an invisible cog in a wheel. One evening, while leaving class, she caught sight of a group of her classmates, laughing and celebrating another successful exam. Her heart sank as she felt the weight of exclusion close in around her. She turned away, the suffocating shame blooming in her chest. Yet, as she walked through campus, the words of David echoed in her mind, reminding her she was more than her past. Those words began to crystallize into something tangible. Inspired, she decided to reach out to David for further guidance regarding the mentorship program. Venturing into that territory, she felt nervous. After all, he existed in a world she had only glimpsed through glass doors. Would he have time for her? Was she prepared to articulate her vision for herself clearly enough to convince him of her worth? During their call, David's temperature matched the unmistakable warmth of encouragement. "Sarah, remember that everyone's path is unique. Use what you've learned from your past to fuel your ambition. What does nursing mean to you?" His question struck deep. Sarah paused, letting the weight of his inquiry settle on her. It was time to move beyond the surface of aspirations and tap into her purpose. Could she craft a narrative where her experiences as a waitress transformed into empathy for her future patients? As she connected these dots, a fervor ignited within her. This was her chance not only to mold her future but to redefine herself wholly. After their conversation, she reflected on her intentions for the application and her vision for the mentorship. It was more than just a program, it was a bridge to reclaiming her narrative. In that moment, it was clear, she wanted to learn, to grow, and to impact lives. Starting with her OWN.AS, she put pen to paper, drafting her mission statement tailored for the application. The flicker of self-belief she fought hard to ignite blazed brighter. In crafting her message, she felt less like an imposter, and more like someone ready to step out from behind the shadows. But just as she was gaining momentum, a text notification sprang her back to reality. It was from Robin. "Have you heard? David is selecting candidates for his program soon. There are rumors that it will be very competitive." The thrill of ambition collided painfully with her fear of rejection anew. The time to face her doubts wasn't just fleeting thoughts anymore, it was imminent, a reality looming right before her. With heart pounding and visions of the road ahead swirling, Sarah understood now, more than ever, the gravity of her journey had just begun. Would she rise and converge her past into a formidable foundation, or would the remnants of self-doubt send her tumbling again? The weight of the moment pressed heavily upon her as she stepped toward the unknown once again. Each passing day felt like a tug-of-war between hope and anxiety as Sarah brushed aside the distractions of normalcy. Classes became her refuge, yet they were also battlegrounds. The approaching selection for David's mentorship program loomed in her mind like a storm cloud. It was both a catalyst for growth and a source of apprehension. That morning in the skills lab, Sarah grasped the synthetic catheter in her hands, her palms slick with sweat. The plastic felt alien, and her mind raced with the potential outcomes. Would she be able to execute the delicate procedure smoothly? Thoughts of her classmates' prowess challenged her to confront her fears. Was she truly cut out for this? Focus on the task at hand, she whispered to herself, allowing the mantra to drown out the clamor of self-doubt. It was a small, but significant moment of resilience, tangible evidence of her evolving mindset. No pressure, but let us see some skill, Sarah. Robin teased with a grin as she approached. Her light-hearted banter helped ease the anxious grip tightening around Sarah's chest. The camaraderie they built gave Sarah the courage to vocalize her hesitations, an act she felt was both revealing and empowering. When it came time for her to demonstrate, Sarah stood at the head of her peers, determination fueling her. As she prepared to insert the catheter into the model, she took a deep breath, anchoring herself in the familiar scent of antiseptic and sterile equipment. I can do this, she thought, drawing strength from her past experiences, both the hardships and the lessons learned from them. The procedure unfolded smoothly, her hands began to move with a newfound purpose, almost as if they were directed by a confident coach within her. Each movement punctuated a realization this was her craft, hard-earned and honed through the trials of past failures. As her classmates cheered her success, Sarah felt a flicker of disbelief. Was it possible she had really begun to transform? However, the momentary high began to dissipate as the implications of her success weighed down on her. Would her performance in this lab translate to success in the mentorship application? Don't lose sight of your vision, she replayed David's words in her mind, their significance deepening under the weight of her uncertainty. She understood that she wasn't just trying to secure a spot in the mentorship, she was fighting to affirm her potential not solely to others, but to herself. Yet, as she journaled her thoughts that evening, a chasm opened inside her. Her childhood experiences and the memories of pain and neglect seemed to mock her newfound courage. The fear returned as she fell asleep, draping itself over her like a heavy blanket. Regrettably, reality interrupted her dreams as she faced images of dismissal, the diner's harsh fluorescent lighting, the condescending comments, and the small-mindedness that had encased her spirit for too long, but a tremor of resoluteness surfaced as daylight broke. Each morning was a second chance. She leaped out of bed, invigorated by the thought that she could push toward another level of personal evolution. Nourished by that spark, she started drafting her application. She poured her essence onto the page, revealing layers of her journey that shaped her into an empathetic candidate. Maybe those experiences, once a source of humiliation, held the key to understanding her future patients. Just as she began to see herself in this new light, her phone chimed yet again. It was from Robin. We need a group study session tonight, and I heard David will be there. Should be interesting. An electrifying mix of excitement and dread danced in her chest. This was the moment of truth. Could she translate her inner clarity into the external world? Would she muster enough courage for a face-to-face opportunity with David? The stakes elevated, she could no longer hide behind her past. As she looked in the mirror, facing the girl who had once felt so small, determination surged through her. She had come too far to hold back now. This was not just about proving her worth to others, it was about affirming her rightful place in a future where she could make a difference. With a deep breath, Sarah responded to Robin, her fingers hovering above the send button. The choice seemed insurmountable, yet here she was at the brink of a new chapter in her life, ready to confront the shadows that had always loomed. Tonight would test her resolve, challenge her limits, and perhaps gain her a stepping stone into a mentorship she had long dreamed of. As she pressed send, a swell of anxiety mixed with hope overshadowed her previous fears. It was the beginning of risking everything for the opportunity to finally become the person she was meant to be. And in that moment, one question echoed louder than the rest: Would she step into the light or would she retreat once more into the shadows? As the sun dipped below the horizon, Sarah felt the electric pull of the approaching evening. The air was thick with possibility and dread, mirrored in her racing heart. This was at a pivotal moment, one that brought both trepidation and unprecedented anticipation. Would she truly rise to the occasion, or would she once more find solace in retreating back to her familiar shadows? Robin's voice echoed in her mind, "Just be yourself." But what version of herself was she supposed to present? The self-assured practitioner who had performed flawlessly during the lab? Or the anxious girl struggling with her identity beneath layers of past rejection? The contrast between these versions left her feeling fragmented, as if the expectation to perform masked a deeper reality she wrestled with. Arriving at the coffee shop where the study group was assembling, Sarah took a moment to steady herself. The scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the chatter of excited students, but as she entered, her insecurities rose to the surface like oil in water. She spotted Robin, animated and welcoming. For a moment, Sarah felt a warm wave of comfort. Still, surrounded by her peers and the looming presence of David, her anxiety proved suffocating. "Hey, you made it!" Robin exclaimed, pulling Sarah from her thoughts. "Yeah, I wanted to," she stuttered, but the words tangled in her throat. "Simon, grab a seat. We were just about to dive into some case studies," Robin encouraged, motioning for her to join. Sarah nodded and sat, internally grappling with feelings of inadequacy. As discussions toggled between clinical scenarios, Sarah initially remained quiet, letting her brain absorb the exchanges. But something remarkable began to happen. The more her classmates engaged, the more her mind sparked with insights about the cases presented. A layer of understanding she had initially doubted within herself began to sharpen. They discussed risk assessments, ethical considerations, and patient care strategies, a tapestry of learning woven with threads she yearned to contribute to. "Sarah, what do you think?" David suddenly asked, his gaze piercing through her defenses. It felt as if time stood still, and the surrounding noise faded into oblivion. "I think each decision impacts not only treatment but the patient's journey," she started, her voice steady although her heart raced. A flicker of passion ignited within her. Maybe she could do this after all. The faces of her classmates shifted from vague indifference to focused attention as she elaborated on her thoughts, folding in references from her own experiences and aspirations. A moment of silence followed her statement, an acknowledgement of the vulnerability she had woven into her words. Then, to her surprise, her peers nodded in agreement, with a few offering constructive responses that stoked the flames of her confidence. With each exchange, the heaviness on her chest seemed to lighten. David smiled, encouraging further participation. "You've got a solid grasp on patient-centered care. We need voices like yours in the field," he remarked, and a sense of validation cascaded through Sarah. She wasn't just skirted around her fears, she was stepping into the conversation, carving a niche for herself. As the study session continued, Sarah gained momentum. Conversations shifted to mentorship and opportunities, opening up new pathways for her. Yet, amidst her victories, the specter of self-doubt loomed close. Would this transient moment of clarity withstand the test of the impending application ordeal? In each subsequent dialogue, the respect she earned became a double-edged sword, a reminder of how far she had come but also of the heights she desired to reach. When the session finally concluded, she realized that her real struggle was only just beginning. Could she maintain this momentum against the tide of her past? Walking out of the coffee shop, Sarah glimpsed herself in the reflection of the glass doors. The girl staring back felt different, stronger, ready to engage with life unabashedly. Yet, the knowledge that fear still lay in wait, poised to ambush her resolve, gnawed at her anxieties. Then Robin approached, her expression earnest. "Are you ready for this? I think you really shine tonight." The pull of impending challenges slashed through Sarah's newfound courage, leaving her momentarily speechless. She grappled for a response, knowing her ultimate fear lay ahead, eclipsing her progress with uncertainty. "Ready as I'll ever be," she finally replied, though the whisper of doubt slithered through her confidence. but beneath that uncertainty flickered a stubborn flame, one that spurred her forward, willing to meet whatever challenges lay ahead. Yet as they moved to leave, a question lingered in the air like unspoken tension. How far could she go before fear entwined with her courage once again? As they stepped into the night, the darkness wrapped around them, yet Sarah felt an undeniable pulse within, a challenge to either conquer herself or fold once more. She sensed the moment of truth was approaching with every heartbeat. Would she seize the opportunity, or would fear tighten its grip anew? The weeks following the study group session unraveled in quick succession, a blend of small victories and relentless self-assessment. Sarah embraced her newfound role, actively participating in discussions and sharing her insights. Yet, with each lifted veil of insecurity, shadows of doubt crept in, whispering reminders of the past. She pressed herself to grow, spending countless evenings poring over texts and articles. One night, she found herself sprawled on the couch surrounded by highlighters and crumpled notes. Her exhaustion bore a heavy weight as the clock ticked past midnight, but she kept pushing against the fatigue. It was exhilarating to study, yet it often felt like a race against time. Deep down, the specter of the application deadline loomed, a reminder that her window for stepping into her future was closing. In that relentless pursuit, days turned into blurred stretches of caffeine-driven late nights and early mornings. Yet as her knowledge bank grew, so did her expectations. She questioned whether she was doing enough. With a class presentation looming, Sarah felt the familiar clutch of anxiety tightening around her chest. Would she be able to convey her thoughts eloquently enough to resonate with her peers and professors? The presentation day arrived with an unexpected chill. The clouds hung low, matching her apprehension. The room filled with students, all battling their inner turmoil. As her turn approached, she felt the weight of her aspirations tangling with paralyzing fear. Standing in front of the audience, facing their expectant gazes, her heart hammered as she scanned the crowd. David was seated at the front, his presence a double-edged sword of support and judgment. But instead of retreating, she took a deep breath. What could be more powerful than sharing her passion? "I'm here to present on the impact of patient background on treatment adherence," she began, voice slightly shaking but growing steadier. Each word felt like stepping stones across a rapidly flowing river, filled with both trepidation and determination. The room fell silent as she proceeded, her ideas unspooling like the golden strands of a delicate tapestry. As she finally wove in her personal anecdotes of interactions with patients from varied backgrounds, she noticed her peers leaning in, visibly engaged. The connection she established felt deeper than mere applause. It was a shared recognition of humanity. When Sarah concluded, her words hung like a thick mist in the air, stirring a reflective atmosphere. To her astonishment, applause erupted from her classmates. Their approval filled her with a warmth she hadn't anticipated. This wasn't just validation of her academic prowess, it was recognition of her voice, her distinct experience that she had once deemed insignificant. Yet as emotion surged, a bittersweet ache hovered within. Doubts crept in. Was this response genuine, or were they simply being courteous? Could she maintain this momentum when faced with the application process, fraught with rejection lists and personal evaluations? Post-presentation, Robin approached, her excitement evident. "You were incredible. The way you connected your experiences made it all so relatable." Their camaraderie enveloped Sarah, infusing her with a sense of belonging. Still, unease shattered her bubble. She forced herself to smile, though she inwardly wrestled with the phenomenon of imposter syndrome that loomed like a shadow. "Thank you, but was it really that good?" Robin's expression shifted into concern. "Don't downplay yourself. You did this, own it." That evening, Sarah returned home reflecting on her performance, dissecting her emotions. Could she transform the fiery authenticity she showcased into resilience during the application phase? As she sat on the edge of her bed, uncertainties whirred through her mind like a storm. Setting her own goals now felt increasingly daunting. With the looming deadline, she scribbled notes, reminding herself of both her triumphs and tribulations. Each point she penned became a stepping stone that held the potential to build her confidence. However, as she closed her notebook for the night, a new realization dawned: she hadn't just grown academically but as a person who could bravely confront her fears. Yet, in the quiet of her room, she noticed the growing tension of uncertainty. What if the application didn't capture this essence of her growth? What if her story remained untold and unheard? Determined, she resolved to keep pushing against that doubt, aware of the fight that lay ahead. With the deadline creeping ever closer, the stakes were higher. Would she manage to navigate the intricacies of vulnerability in her applications, or would her past hinder her once more? As she turned off the lamp and let the darkness envelop her, anticipation bubbled underneath her resolve, and a new challenge surfaced. Would she fight to articulate her journey authentically, or succumb to the fear of inadequacy that could very well define her future? The days after the presentation were a whirlpool of emotion for Sarah. Each morning began with the same jarring thought: the application deadline, looming like a dark cloud overhead, reminding her of the stakes tied to every essay, every reflection she had yet to articulate. As she navigated her classes, she felt both buoyed by her peers' validation and burdened by self-doubt. The stark contrast weighed heavily on her shoulders, as if she were balancing the improbable joy of recognition with the crushing reality of insecurity. In an effort to cultivate her confidence, Sarah established a routine. Mornings were earmarked for drafting her personal statement, a pivotal component of her application. She aimed to craft a narrative that would mirror the enthusiasm she had commanded in her presentation. Yet, each sentence felt like moving through thick mud. The fear of inadequacy whispered, attacking her thoughts with questions that gnawed at her resolve. Was her voice worthy of being heard? Would the admissions committee even care about her story? Despite her initial frustration, she began seeking refuge in writing. That weekend, as sunlight streamed through her window, igniting her small study area with warmth, Sarah committed to filling the blank pages. She focused on unleashing the raw truth of her experiences. However, each reminiscence was tempered by the icy fingers of doubt. Memories of past failures flickered before her like shadows, subtly reinforcing her fear that she might never escape their grasp. After hours spent revising and poring over her drafts, she finally stepped away from her desk, her heart racing in tandem with her frustration. Thunder rumbled ominously in the distance, almost echoing her inner turmoil. It was time to clear her mind. She grabbed her jacket and headed outside, seeking solace in the rhythmic shuffle of her feet against the pavement. As she walked, Sarah reflected on the profound success of her presentation. The way she had resonated with the room's energy had unveiled a piece of her that she had long buried. Could she carry that same spirit into the applications ahead? Each thought ignited small embers of hope, and with it, a burgeoning sense of resolve. There had to be a way to convey her essence authentically. She just needed to trust herself more. The storm clouds reared and let loose, drenching her in unexpected downpour. Sarah halted beneath a cafe awning, shivering but invigorated by the heady scent of freshly brewed coffee wafting through the air. Her mind spun with rapid thoughts. Perhaps the rain was a metaphor. Just as the downpour falls, refreshing and renewing the earth, she could reclaim her narrative and wash away the doubts that had tainted it. Retreating inside the cafe, shivering yet alert, she ordered a hot chocolate. While waiting, she overheard a pair of conversations at the table next to her. They discussed the transitions from undergraduate life to postgraduate ambitions, laughing and sharing hopes candidly. A stranger at the table then discussed their own struggle with self-image, revealing their journey of vulnerability. Listening intently, something shifted inside Sarah. An important connection rippled through her own anxieties. That brief moment spurred a powerful resolve. The realization struck her like lightning: if others could embrace their imperfections, then so could she. Perhaps it was time to weave the struggles and truths of her journey into her application. Letting fear dictate her voice would only stifle the uniqueness she held within. Returning home invigorated, she flipped open her notebook and began to write with newfound clarity. The words flowed like water, sincere and flowing, capturing her evolution, the courage to show vulnerability and the strength she had gained through her journey. But even as the words danced on the page, a question lingered in the back of her mind. As she closed the notebook, the uncertainty returned with a weight she could not dismiss. Would the authenticity she fought to present be enough to secure her place, or would it still fall short in the relentless arena of competition? As she settled down for the night, a familiar unease seeped in, mingling with determination. The fracture between fear and aspiration widened. What lay ahead could become the defining moment of her journey, but would she have the courage to fully reveal herself once more? With that thought echoing in her mind, she drifted off to sleep, her next step towards that answer simmering just beyond her grasp. Sarah jolted awake, her heart racing as the sunlight spilled into her room, casting long shadows across the floor. The dream that had haunted her was still vivid in her mind. She had stood on a stage, her voice faltering, words slipping through her fingers like grains of sand. The feigned smiles and whispered snickers echoed mercilessly. Rubbing the remnants of sleep from her eyes, she sat up, determination settling in like an iron weight. Facing an unmade bed and scattered papers, she resumed her writing routine. Today marked the final push. The deadline loomed dangerously close, a tangible entity ready to pounce. As her fingers danced over the keyboard, the fear that had clouded her thoughts began to recede. There was a sense of urgency now, an obligation to capture her authentic self before her own doubts could stifle her voice once more. The words came pouring out, an unfiltered stream of consciousness, confronting her fears of inadequacy head-on. Paragraph after paragraph, she peeled back the layers of her past, revealing a tapestry woven from moments of both triumph and failure. She wrote about the time she had stumbled during a high school debate, the unmistakable rush of embarrassment flooding her cheeks. Yet, at the same time, she detailed how that experience had driven her to improve, practice tirelessly until she was ready to embrace the challenge again. Each recollection became a stepping stone, transforming her narrative from one of mere survival into one of resilience and growth. The raw truth that she unearthed resonated not only with the reader in her mind but also with the courageous girl she had once been. The image of herself standing on that stage no longer filled her with dread, instead, it sparked defiance deep within her. She would no longer let fear dictate her narrative. As the clock ticked down, she finished the final sentences, her heart soaring as she reviewed each carefully crafted line. This was more than an application, it was a declaration of her journey, her resolve, and her evolution. Pride swelled within her, yet just as quickly as it grew, a dark whisper of doubt slithered back, questioning the impact of her story. Was it compelling enough? Would it resonate with those who held her future in their hands? Seeking clarity, she decided to share the draft with Sophia, her best friend and a critical yet compassionate audience. Waiting as she sent the email felt akin to holding her breath beneath water. While Sarah trusted her friend's judgment, the fear of vulnerability gnawed at her. Moments felt like hours as she paced, each step echoing her rising anxiety. When her phone buzzed, she nearly dropped it in her haste. The subject line read, "Your story." Her pulse quickened as she opened the email. Sophia's response was an avalanche of praise, warmth spilling over her insecurities like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Sarah, this is beautiful. You've captured not just your hurdles, but your heart as well. They're going to feel your passion." A smile broke across Sarah's face, transforming her internal storm into a gentle rain. Sophia's words illuminated a path forward. She could feel the surges of possibility igniting her spirit once more. Encouraged, she read through her draft again, allowing herself to savor the strengths she had laid bare. However, even with her renewed confidence, one question continued to gnaw away at her resolve. How would her vulnerabilities be perceived by strangers? Despite the validation from a friend, the uncertainty about whether to take the risk of unreservedly exposing herself lingered ominously. Still, through the flickering insecurity, a flicker of hope illuminated her choices. She couldn't afford to retreat into safety. To truly stand out, she had to step into the unknown. As she prepared her final submission, Sarah paused, her mind racing. What if this one decision was not just about an application? What if it transformed her life in ways she couldn't begin to understand? The moment of truth loomed, and with it, the potential for an exhilarating new chapter in her life. She submitted her application, breath caught in her throat, knowing that she had taken a risk. Tomorrow would bring responses, acceptance or rejection, but today was about embracing the vulnerability she had fought so hard to articulate. As she exhaled the uncertainty, a sudden realization washed over her. A hidden strength lay within her that had finally surfaced. Surely, this was just the beginning. The anticipation of what awaited her both excited and terrified her. With every possibility spinning through her thoughts, a lingering question gripped her heart. What would she discover about herself now that she had chosen to be brave? The next morning, Sarah woke with a sense of trepidation mingling with hope. She had laid her soul bare in her application, and now all she could do was wait. The buzzing of her phone broke the silence, and her heart leaped. It was a message from Sophia checking in. "Any news yet?" it read. "Not yet," Sarah replied, her fingers trembling as she typed. She found herself immersed in speculation, evaluating every possible outcome. Acceptance would mean validation of her journey, but rejection would feel like the unraveling of the threads she worked so hard to weave together. The clock seemed to mock her as moments stretched into what felt like hours. She clung to the thought of the progress she had made. Each keystroke had been a small rebellion against her past fears of inadequacy. No matter the response, she felt a flicker of pride in her heart for confronting her anxieties head-on. It was a brutal reminder of the stakes. With her head filled with possibilities, Sarah decided to divert her energy. She dug into her writing, crafting a short story inspired by the themes of her application. This forced her to deal with her vulnerabilities on a different canvas, shaping fear into fiction, a subject matter that felt accessible yet terrifyingly real. The hours rolled by, and when another message from Sophia pinged on her phone, it sent her pulse racing. "Just saw about some local open mic night tonight. Want to go?" Anxiety surged like a sudden wave, pushing the air from her lungs. The thought of standing on a stage, her voice audible to strangers, ignited a familiar mixture of panic and determination within her. Past fears loomed large. What if she stumbled, or if no one wanted to listen? But then, a part of her recalled the clarity she felt while writing. "Let us do it," Sarah replied, her impulse guiding her fingers. She arrived at the small cafe in the evening, the atmosphere electric with a blend of laughter and anticipation. The stage, a solitary spotlight aimed at a plain microphone, was unassuming yet intimidating. Sarah watched as each performer took their turn, sharing pieces of themselves, revealing vulnerabilities that resonated with the audience. A voice in her mind began to surface, urging her to confront her ingrained fears. By the time it was nearly her turn, she felt the familiar apprehension rising within, twisting her stomach into knots. But as she watched the others share their stories, courage surged alongside her trepidation. When her name was finally called, Sarah stood up, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. Each step toward the stage felt monumental, each breath taken with purpose. As she grasped the microphone, vulnerability washed over her. This was the moment where she could either retreat or embrace the newfound strength she had uncovered. Taking a deep breath, she recounted her story, layering her fears and moments of rejection with the pride she had found in overcoming them. Her voice was steadier than expected, resonating with authenticity. She could see nods of understanding from the audience, further igniting her narrative. With each word, she shed the weight of past fears. Finally, as she concluded her tale, the sound of applause broke the weighty silence, echoing in her heart like a promise that while fear could linger, courage could triumph. As she stepped off the stage, a surge of adrenaline coursed through her. It was liberating to articulate her struggles in such a public way, to feel accepted despite the cracks she had once viewed as weaknesses. Her cheeks flushed, not with embarrassment, but with newfound confidence. She had shared a piece of her soul and felt embraced, not criticized. Suddenly, a voice broke through her thoughts. "That was amazing." A woman approached her, a stranger whose enthusiasm was palpable. "You have a gift." Flushed with gratitude, Sarah found herself engaging in a spirited conversation about her writing and sharing the struggles she had faced. The validation she received fused with the adrenaline still pulsing through her veins, affirming her decision to embrace. Her voice As they talked, a message notification lit up her phone. A response regarding her application had finally arrived. A mixture of excitement and dread washed over her. This moment of potential closure could either catapult her into a new world or leave her grappling with disappointment. Heart racing, she glanced down. What lay inside that email could change everything. With tentative fingers, she opened it, uncertainty gripping her heart tightly. Sarah's heart raced as she faced the screen, breath held in anticipation. The words scrolled down slowly, and with each line, a kaleidoscope of emotions swirled within her. As she read the acceptance letter for David's mentorship program, a wave of exhilaration washed over her. She had done it against all odds, against the doubts that had plagued her for so long. She had made it through. A multifaceted sense of triumph enveloped her, a recognition of the arduous journey she had undertaken. Tears of disbelief and joy filled her eyes. Each tear was a testament to the battles won, to the fears she had confronted every step of the way. She remembered standing in that crowded diner, drenched in embarrassment and shame, feeling insignificant among the laughter of wealthy patrons. Now, as she reflected on her journey, she felt a profound sense of gratitude for the rich tapestry of experiences that had shaped her into this moment of achievement. In the weeks following her acceptance, Sarah transformed further. During mentorship meetings with David and her peers, she showcased not only her growing medical knowledge but also her unique perspective as someone who understood struggle. She bridged gaps between theoretical knowledge and real-world application, earning respect from her mentors and peers alike. Each interaction reinforced her self-worth, fueling her drive to not only become a nurse but to advocate for those often overlooked in healthcare. Sarah's confidence burgeoned, completely altering how she viewed her past. No longer was she merely a waitress, she had conquered the labels that had once restrained her, growing into a woman molded by resilience. As she gathered with her study group, discussing case studies and patient care strategies, those echoes of shame faded into the background. Robin, always supportive, praised her insights, and Sarah felt the warmth of recognition. She belonged here, thriving in this environment. The moments of validation snowballed into more substantial recognition. Sarah was selected to present her journey at a local nursing conference, sharing her intersection of personal and professional growth. Standing in front of a mixed audience, students, teachers, and established professionals, she was no longer meek. She spoke with clarity and poise, weaving her story of transformation into a narrative that resonated deeply. The applause that filled the room echoed not just for her knowledge, but for her courage to rise from a place of perceived weakness into a beacon of hope for others. As the conference concluded, Sarah received praise from experienced nurses, their words solidifying her place within the professional community. "You have a gift for connecting with patients, keep honing that compassion," one attendee remarked, leaving her buoyed with self-assurance. Reflecting on her journey, Sarah marveled at the contours of her growth. She had proven to herself and those around her that she could rise above societal judgments and personal insecurities. The shadows of doubt that once clung to her began to evaporate, replaced by a solid conviction of competence and purpose. That night, enveloped in the peace of her room, she penned her thoughts in a journal. Each line celebrated the milestones she had achieved, the fears she had silenced, and a vivid vision of her future as a nurse. A smile crept onto her face as she closed the journal, ready to embrace the next chapter of her life, a chapter written in resilience, ambition, and newfound belief in herself. Now, as Sarah embarked on this new phase, she understood that she was no longer a mere waitress lost among the laughter of the privileged. She was a force of change with a mission. And with that realization, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment. After all, nothing could overshadow the journey she had bravely undertaken. You need to subscribe now to our channel. This is the moment to show your support for stories of personal transformation that inspire. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others find this content. Comment your thoughts, reactions, and theories about Sarah's journey. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this remarkable conclusion.